Welcome to the Abide Cohort Session 1. I'm David Stein, discipleship pastor here at Revolution Church. I am here with Pastor Jason
Gertis,
lead pastor of Revolution Church. You may be watching this online, or you may be listening to this as the Grow People podcast. However you are consuming the cohort, we're glad you're here. Now, this is really important. On the website, you can download the Abide Cohort Guide. It will allow you to follow along with us, and that's where you're going to find your homework. Because there is homework. There is work involved in following Jesus.
There is, yes. Work in following Jesus and the Abide Cohort.
Yes. Yeah. So that's all online. We'll refer to that as we get to some of the homework. But we want to start out with everything we're talking about is really based on the mission and vision of Revolution Church.
Yeah, the mission of our church, those of you who've been around, you may have heard it, but just in case you haven't, we always like to repeat it. But the mission is to love Jesus, grow people.
Which will never change.
Never change. That is the mission of the church. One, because the church is ultimately about Jesus. It's his church. And then what we are trying to do as a church is not only to love Jesus, but then grow people. And GROW is an acronym, G-R-O-W, Gospel, Relationships, Obedience, Works. In fact, our whole discipleship process is designed around that. So that's what we're trying to do, and this is a tool to do that, to ultimately accomplish our vision to be a generational movement of gospel multiplication. And so we want to build our church on this process so that it goes on for generations and gospel multiplication happens.
That's a great place to start, but what I'm most excited about is what we're going to talk about next. Pastor Jason and I have had a lot of conversations about what does discipleship look like?
Yeah.
And a few weeks ago, we actually had the conversation, what is a disciple?
Yeah.
Because a lot of churches have all of these programs and plans, and this is our discipleship thing, and this is what a disciple is, but nobody's really defined that.
Yeah.
So we went to a guy, he's pretty good. His name is Dallas Willard.
Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
I know he's been one of your heroes in the faith for a long time. And he had a definition of disciple that we thought was excellent. We want to share that with you. And after you hear it, it'll make sense as to why we're doing this Abide Cohort the way we're doing it.
Yes. Yeah, Dallas Willard, he's gone to be with the Lord now, but brilliant guy, and I quote him often in sermons. But this is the quote. He said, "A disciple is someone who has decided that the most important thing in their life is to learn to live the way Jesus said to live." And so when you think about discipleship, as you were saying, David, like even us, we have a whole process, but as we are like helping refine our process, it's like, well, at the end of the day, programs and processes are good, but we don't know if they're working until we actually have a definition to say, okay, what do we want people to actually do? What does it mean to actually be a disciple? Because what we have to understand is all of us are being formed. Discipleship at the end of the day is really about formation. It's not a question of if we're being discipled. It's just a question by who or what. And we'll talk about that. But when it comes to formation, it's really understanding that we're already the disciple of someone or something. We being formed and shaped. And so for us as a church, what we are saying is we want to be really clear by actually defining what a disciple is so that we know, okay, all the things we're doing, processes and programs, are they actually helping us accomplish the goal of discipleship? And so when we say we want to disciple people, it's like, what are we trying to disciple them to be? We're trying to be a disciple of Jesus. Again, this quote from Willard is so good, saying Jesus and the way he said to live is the most important thing in our life. And so therefore, for us, we just took our mission and vision and used that as a way to define a disciple.
Yeah, and disciple and learn, that's the same word.
Yeah.
So a disciple is a learner. So somebody who has made the decision, which is to cut something off. So you're cutting off everything else in order to say the most important thing is that I learn how to do things the way Jesus said to do them.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in the context of our church?
Yeah, saying, okay, we're going to follow Jesus. And again, here at our church, we want to grow people. And so what we did is just using the acronym of GROW to say, here at Revolution Church, that way people know how to define it here, the ones that we are, responsible to pastor and lead. At Revolution, a disciple is someone who's grounded in the gospel, that's G, is rooted in relationships, that's R, is operating in obedience, that's O, and then walking in good works, that's W. So using GROW as a framework, again, GROW, to say, Now we're actually trying to define for you what a disciple is. And so again, as Pastor David said, using this cohort as a way to help you learn how to be a better disciple, our goal for you is those four things: to be grounded in the gospel, to be rooted in relationships, operating in obedience, and then walking in good works.
If we had a whiteboard behind us, we would be breaking this down.
Yeah, draw it out.
So we're going to draw it out, but you can just download the Abide Cohort guide
yes.
and you'll see everything. So let's talk about the gospel.
Yeah.
What does somebody who is grounded in the gospel look like? What happens?
Yeah, the gospel is a Bible word to kind of describe all the activity of God, everything that God has done to save us. And the reason why it's the foundation of all growth is that it's understanding and being grounded in the gospel means you understand what Jesus did for you. You're trusting in Jesus. You're not trying to be a Christian. Mm-hmm. Again, that's a great question. It's like if you ask somebody, I've mentioned this in sermons many times from Martin Lloyd-Jones, are you a Christian? If someone says, I'm trying to be, well, they're not grounded in the gospel. Because it's an understanding that at the end of the day, I'm saved by grace through faith. It's not something I have done. It's something that Jesus did. And so to be a disciple, it's first being grounded in the gospel. It's understanding that you're saved by grace through faith. You've trusted Christ. You've been biblically baptized. You understand basically the grounding of your faith and your salvation. And the gospel is not something that we move on from. I think especially a lot of people that maybe grew up in church, that's how they thought about the gospel. But it's something that we go deeper into. And that's what I love about being grounded in it. Like I can never be too grounded, right? Like I'm grounded in the gospel. Because as we grow, it's understanding that as God grows fruit in my life and I'm growing up, that I have to grow down just as much. It's like if you think about a tall building, you may see a skyscraper that comes 200 feet out of the ground where it's just as far in the ground as it is above it. And so one of the key aspects of growth is understanding that the gospel is the grounding of our faith. And so we grow further into our understanding of what it means to be saved by grace through faith.
So grounded in the gospel, but then these relational roots grow.
Yes.
And part of following Jesus is to grow those relational roots. And we have ways that happens here at Revolution Church, but these aren't boxes to check. They're important distinctions when we are building relationships.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we want to do, again, with this cohort, is help people understand that you're not a disciple simply because you attend a bunch of stuff. Like I walked an aisle, I'm in a group, I serve, I went to this Bible study, I went to Sunday school, whatever it is, all great things. But just attending things and showing up to things doesn't make us a disciple. It's actually the presence of the gospel in our life, and then we're growing in our relationships. We're actually becoming rooted in relationships. Now, again, clearly there's ways that we do that here at our church. You can join a team, you can join a group. All those are important. Those are simply avenues for you to, develop relationships with people here at our church. But at the end of the day, being rooted in relationships means I'm actually growing in my love for other people. I'm actually becoming more like Jesus in my relationships. I'm actually learning how to forgive people. And that's what made Jesus, his message so radical is Jesus said, you've heard it said, love those who love you. But he said, what credit is that to you? I say, love your enemies. And so being rooted in relationships is, again, understanding that over time, I'm growing my relational capacity to forgive people, conflict resolution, learning to listen more than I speak. I think that's one of the kind of misnomers when it comes to church people and discipleship. There's a lot of people that have been discipled for a lot of years, but yet they're not any more loving. They're not any more forgiving. They talk way more than they listen, right? They're not relationally healthy. And what we're saying is we want you to be rooted in relationships. We want you to be relationally healthy. And that's what it means to be a disciple of Jesus.
Sounds like you're almost saying you would grow fruit.
Yeah, which would be the next part. Yeah, that's the O. Again, what I love about grow, obviously it's our mission, but it's a great visual. Again, you see the process. Like the seed is first planted in the ground. That's the gospel. It's growing. And then it starts to grow roots. Then it starts to grow up. And that's where we start to operate in obedience. That's the O. when Jesus said, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, and then you do what I say, or you obey my commandments. And so as we are growing as a disciple, again, it's understanding not only am I grounded in the gospel, I'm rooted in relationships, but I'm starting to operate in obedience. And what I love about the word operating in obedience, not just because it's alliteration, I love alliteration, but
He was very excited.
about this
with
one.
operating.
Yes, I love this one. But in today's technological world, everybody understands operating systems. Whether you're a Mac person or a heathen and you like Windows, whatever it is, you understand there's an operating system. Our phones and our computers have an OS. And for us as Christians, our operating system should be, what does Jesus say about this? And I'm going to do what he says. Like, that's how I operate. That's how I live my life. And again, I think so many times people think more about following Jesus as like, oh yeah, I made a decision, Yeah, but being a disciple is an everyday decision, saying, I didn't just make a decision, I want to be a disciple. I want to follow Jesus. I want to do my marriage the way Jesus said to do it. I want to do my money the way Jesus said to do it. I want to spend my time the way Jesus said to do it. And so operating in obedience is about seeing the fruit of the Spirit grow in your life. And that happens as we begin to practice spiritual disciplines, as we abide in Jesus's words, we pray, we fast, we do a lot of the things that we do as a church at the beginning of every year. And so it's a way for us to start doing this is another Dallas Willard quote, doing what we can do to enable what we can't do. I can't grow spiritual fruit. It's the fruit of the Spirit. Just like I can't grow physical muscles, but I can do what I can do. I can work out, right? I can eat right. So in the same way, that's what spiritual disciplines are. It's doing what you can do to enable what you can't do. And as we do that, as we operate in obedience, then the fruit of the Spirit is grown in our life.
This makes something that you said years ago when I first started coming to Revolution Church so clear when you put it in the context of grow. And this was the first time I'd ever heard anybody explain it this way, that the gospel comes to us.
Yeah.
So we're growing in the God, grounded in the gospel. The gospel comes to us to go through us to others.
Yes.
And that's the walking in good works.
Yes. And again, you think about fruit. What's inside every fruit is more seeds. So whatever God grows in us, he wants to be multiplied through us into others. And so yes, the W in being a disciple is walking in good works. And so that's where, as God grows fruit in your life, it's meant to be planted in other people. Like we have a phrase that I said before, your fruit is not for you. Like the worst thing that you can do is like the fruit that God grows in your life, just keep it all to yourself.
Yeah.
God wants us to be a blessing to the world around us. So this is about us starting to do good works, starting to live life on mission, starting to serve people, bless people, share our faith, starting to multiply out, starting to disciple other people. So when we're trying to walk in good works, what is happening is exactly what you just said. God grew the gospel in us. Now we're grounded in it. Now we want other people to experience the same life that we have in Jesus. We want them to know the hope that we have. And that happens as we do good works and then share our faith with them.
I hope you're hearing that this acronym GROW actually sounds like formation.
It does,
And one of the exciting things when we were writing this was just thinking about Galatians chapter 4 and the birthing of what happens in someone when they are growing.
Yes. Yeah, that verse, I have began to quote it many times now, not only because I'm a parent, but because I'm a pastor. And even though, I'm a man and I didn't give birth to children, the phrase that Paul says, like he's in the pains of childbirth until Christ is formed in you. And again, that's the goal. Transformation is the goal, not just information.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times, unfortunately, that's how we can think of it. Like we think of learning in a very Western kind of classical sense where I go to a class and I learn information. And we're not saying there's not information to learn. We just told you some information. But the goal is understanding that the information is meant to produce transformation. And so, yes, it's this formation process where you're going to learn things along the way, but then you apply those things. You begin to live those things out. And that's why we wanted to help define what a disciple is for you. And eventually we want to even develop like a diagnostic tool that helps people actually score themselves to see how they're doing.
Are you growing in patience? Are you growing in listening more than talking? And I think a diagnostic tool is great because, like you said, people can be in discipleship classes and courses and programs their entire Christian life, but not grow in those areas.
Yes.
Galatians chapter 2 also talks about this. I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ in me.
Yeah.
It is about transformation. And in your Abide Cohort guide, you'll see that it says the goal is to be transformed from me to Christ in me.
Yes.
It is no longer me, but him in me and through me.
Yes.
So formation is a big part of the Abide Cohort. Formation is a big part of our Christian life.
Yeah.
And as you said, we can be formed. We are being formed.
Yeah.
It's a matter of who's forming us.
Yes.
And we can have some good formation, some bad formation.
Yes.
We broke it down to something even with more alliteration.
Yeah, we love alliteration around here. Yeah, there's two kinds of formation, faulty formation and fruitful formation. And again, I think, especially when it comes to discipleship, we can also forget that not only are we being formed into the image of Jesus, that's the goal, but in order to be formed, we have to recognize where we've been first deformed.
Yeah.
Where, as Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah said in Jeremiah chapter 1, there's things that we have to uproot. There's things that we have to dig up and get rid of, things that need to go, so that therefore we can plant and build. And so it's understanding that, all of us have been faulty formed. And we just gave you some simple ways. This can happen in your family of origin. No. I mean, we all grew up in families or the lack of families, depending in dysfunctional families. As I joked before, you can't say the word families without the word lies, and so a lot of times that's where the lies we believe we learned in our families.
Right.
And even though I think a lot of times parents are doing the best that they can, the best they know how to do, but it's just understanding the way that our parents treated God or understood God, or the way our parents did relationships, the way our parents operated, how they all those things we're going to learn naturally. And even though they may feel natural to us, they're not necessarily right. As I've said many times, it might be real, it's just not right. So it's understanding that we are being faultily formed by our family of origin, our own healthy habits we have, our own unhealthy relationships, stories and lies that we may believe, our unhealthy environments, the world around us. And it's then realizing that Christ wants us to be fruitfully formed. Again, that's what we're after. And it's understanding, well, now we're in the new family of Jesus. That's called the church. And so now we have brothers and sisters, and we say this a lot around here. We have family culture statements, things that we want our church here, the family of Jesus here at Revolution Church, to do. And so we have to set those expectations to say, hey, in this family, we don't do that. We don't do things like that. We assume the best and ask questions. We don't assume the worst and accuse. So we're trying to help people be formed in a fruitful way. And that's what this whole process is about being formed into the image of Christ. Like you said, Christ in me, and realizing God wants us to be fruitfully formed.
Yeah, when Jesus invited people to be with him, when Jesus invited people to follow him, he said, come follow me.
Yeah.
Not come admire me, come follow me. And Jesus is called rabbi. Rabbi is a teacher. And the goal of the student of the rabbi was to become like the rabbi. So if you think about apprenticing under Jesus, we want to become more like him. That's transformation.
Yes. Well, and that's what we're trying to use. I mean, it's an ancient practice, but again, so often in our modern world kind of loses significance to say, Jesus is not just your Savior, he's your Lord. He's the one you follow. He's your teacher. He's your rabbi. And like you said here, to be a rabbi meant I'm going to be with him. I got to spend time with him. I'm going to become like him and then do as he did. And so discipleship really is about us saying, all right, I'm going to become Jesus' apprentice. I'm going to follow Jesus. Now, I know he's not here in a physical form like he was in the first century, but he actually said that it's better for us now. Because we have the Holy Spirit within us who is going to remind us of everything that Jesus said. And so it's looking at Jesus. How did he live? And then I'm going to now apprentice that in my own life.
And that's quite frankly just a better way to go about it.
Yes.
We talked a lot about formation when it comes to we're being formed faultily or fruitfully. But then there is a sequence that just makes sense.
Yeah.
You call it the success sequence. It was something that you talked about last year. But when it comes to following Jesus, it makes a lot of sense to have a success sequence.
Yeah,
I had to say that slow.
That's a lot of words there, a lot of alliteration there. Yeah, I don't remember where I first heard this, but there was actually a massive study that was done over a period of decades studying people to see, okay, what were the things in their life that helped them actually move out of poverty into the middle class, which is the vast majority of people in America. So when you look at that and say, okay, what are the things that make it, like if they just do these things, then they more than likely they have a high likelihood of moving out of poverty. And when I read this, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. But the sequence is so simple, like we take it for granted. Like I'm gonna say it to you, if you've never heard it, and again, you can go look this study up. It's so simple, it's like, oh, well, duh. And here they are. 3 things. If you graduate high school.
Check.
If you get a full-time job after graduation.
Check.
And then you wait until you're married to have children. Like not have children before you're married, but wait till you're married to have children.
Yep.
If you just do those 3 things, then the likelihood of you not living in poverty and then actually moving on to be a productive member of society in the middle class, like statistically, it's crazy. Like if you just do those 3 things, more than likely that's where you're gonna end up.
I didn't say check because I just don't have kids.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. And again, not saying that people that have kids before they're married can't end up there, but again, those are outliers. And so if you think about that as a success sequence as a parent, it's like, okay, well now I know what to do. I want my kid to graduate high school, get a full-time job, get married, and have children. And my son is in that. Like he graduated high school, graduated college, he's got a full-time job, just got married. Hopefully one day soon he'll have children. But you think about that from a sequence of like, okay, if I just do those things, I'm gonna be successful. So we took that model, and again, thinking
You're gonna
about-
be a great-grandfather.
I hope so, Lord willing. Saying, okay, how do we create a success sequence for a disciple then? And again, no shocker, kind of even using grow, but just thinking, and I asked my mentors this, like, if you were going to create a success sequence, what would you tell people? And one of my major mentors, this is what he said, and we're kind of using that as a framework again. He said, following Jesus in community, loving your neighbor. Following Jesus in community, loving your neighbor.
Okay.
And if you think about that, like that is what the grow process is. Following Jesus, the gospel. In community, you're in relationships. Learning to love your neighbor, operating in obedience and doing good works. And so that's a basic success sequence to say, man, if you just do those 3 things, you follow Jesus in community, loving your neighbor, you're going to be a disciple.
So as you're looking at the Abide Cohort Guide, and you'll see, we're gonna list out spiritual practices, but those practices don't lead to, don't bring merit to you, don't bring favor from God, but these are ways in order for you to follow Jesus and do the things that he did, so there can be transformation, so there can be fruitful formation. So we've been deformed.
Now we just have to be reformed.
And that's the whole goal of the cohort, the whole goal of creating a rule of life, which we will talk about.
In session 2,
And then as each week progresses, you'll have homework. And if you're doing this in community with others and spending time with the Lord, maybe you're doing this during this season of Abide. As you're doing these homework, ask God, what are you doing in my life? How are you going to change me? That's one of the toughest prayers. Hey, use me any way you want and change me any way you want. So the first part of your homework is called a formation evaluation. And it's going to take some time. It's going to take some prayer. It's going to take some thought. And what this is, it's a snapshot in time. It's a snapshot in time of your life right now and how you have been formed, so you can look at that and say, oh, okay, I have been faultily formed. Or these are areas where I want to be transformed. These are areas where I want to be reformed. So that's your homework. That's session 1. Again.
Sorry, were you done? I was going to say something.
I can be done.
No, I'm not saying you should be done. No, what I'm saying, just kind of recapping, which I know you were doing, Like at the end of this, we want you to have a rule of life and be in a formation group. And again, as Pastor David just referenced that's where we're going. But what this formation evaluation does is it helps you know where you are. Because again, you can't start where you're not. And so this is just a very simple tool. So again, the goal is not to fill this out and turn it in and get a star, right? That's not what we're doing. This is for you. This is for you to evaluate where you are right now and how you have been deformed so that now you can start to go through the process of being reformed by, again, developing a rule of life, living out these areas, being grounded in the gospel, rooted in relationships, operating in obedience, walking in good works. So that's what we're going to talk about as we move forward, but this is just a tool to help you know where you are now.
And have fun with this. Yeah. Have fun with the Abide cohort, because it's going to lead to even more community. And we'll talk more about that. Session 2 coming up. Welcome to the Abide Cohort Session 2. Session 1 included your formation evaluation, so hopefully you've been working through that. It was a lot. I know when I filled out my formation evaluation, there were some things that I really had to think about from my past, from my faulty formation, and just write them down, because it is a snapshot in time in your life, so you can see, okay, I have been deformed. Someone's been forming me.
Yes.
And turns out we've all been faultily formed, but we want to be fruitfully formed by following Jesus. So in session 1, we talked about what does it look like to be a disciple. We gave a definition of disciple.
Yeah, the disciple, again, here at Revolution, is someone who's grounded in the gospel, is rooted in relationships, operating in obedience, and walking in good works. And yeah, again, the whole purpose of all these sessions is to help you have kind of a snapshot, an overview, if you will, of what does it mean to be a disciple, and then what are some next steps that I can take. And like you said, part of that is starting where you are, your formation evaluation. And it is hard because, we all have a past. And, the older we are, the more past we have. But it's such a helpful process, to go through, to think about the ways that we were shaped and the ways that we were formed, how we think about certain things. Again, because discipleship is ultimately about learning how to live in the new family of Jesus, learning how to live as a son or a daughter of Christ now. And we have to understand, we may have done that in my old family, but we don't do that in my new family.
Oh, I love Pete Scazzera's quote.
Yes.
You may have Jesus in your heart, but you got grandpa
in your bones.
Grandpa in your bones.
Yes.
And my grandfather was a bootlegger. And he was a gambler, a bootlegger, a pool hustler.
Wow.
He was fascinating. Gave me a cigar at my bar mitzvah.
At 12?
I was 13 years old. I'm walking around with a cigar.
Yeah.
And so, he was formed.
Yes.
Faultily formed.
Yes.
I was faultily formed, but now transformed by the grace of Jesus Christ. So as we start session 2, we start with a question that we ask in pastoral care all the time.
All the time, yeah.
What do you want?
What do you want? Yeah, it's very interesting, again, when you think about discipleship, and we see this even in John 1, when the first few disciples turned to start following Jesus, Andrew and another one who were following John the Baptist, they start following Jesus. Jesus turns to them and says, "What are you seeking?" Which is in essence saying, "What do you want?" And then their answer was fantastic. They said, "Where are you staying?" Which means basically, we just want to be where you want to be. So we all have to ask ourselves the question, what do you want? And then the second question, these are very, very helpful questions just in general. What do you need to do to get what you want? Because the follow-up to that is you don't get what you want by doing what you want. That's one of our family culture statements. Mm-hmm. You get what you want by doing the things you need to do to get what you want. So for us, it's saying if what we want is to abide in Jesus, if what we want is to become like Jesus, that's what we want. We want to be formed into the image of Jesus. So then we have to ask ourselves the question, well, then what do I need to do to get what I want? Again, the way I always think about this, the most simple one is I want to lose weight. All right, that's what I want. Then what do I need to do to get what I want? Well, I need to work out. I need to eat right. But then it's remembering, but I don't get what I want by doing what I want. I wish I could eat honey buns all day and lose weight. Like who doesn't wish that they could get what they want by doing what they want? But we only get what we want by doing what we need to do to get what we want.
Do you know that when we took honey buns out of the team member lounge, there was a revolt?
Yeah,
almost a church split.
Yeah. And if you don't serve, you join a team, you will get snacks.
Yeah, if you're wondering where the coffee is in the lobby, it's in the team member lounge.
In the team member lounge. We have it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
you just had to serve.
Yeah. So you don't get what you want doing what you want. To get what we want, to abide in Jesus, we need to follow Jesus. That was the definition of being a
Yes.
disciple.
Yeah.
So we need a way to live.
Yes.
And we have it here in the Abide Cohort Guide. Make sure you've downloaded it or you're looking at it right now because
Yeah,
all of your
session 2.
homework will be there. We need to have a way of life to rule our life.
Yes.
So that's what we're getting into right now. Now, the word rule is from Latin.
You're a Latin guy.
I studied Latin and ancient Greek.
Yeah.
In 19, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. Who would have thunk I'd still be using it?
The Lord knew.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
It means what in Latin?
regular.
Regular,
Yeah.
which means like straight or a piece of wood or a pattern or example. And what's interesting, we talk about a rule of life. We did not come up with this. This is an ancient practice in church tradition. But a lot of people, just especially here in Western Christianity, we didn't grow up hearing about this. And so it's kind of made a resurgence in the church over the last decade or so. And I think it's fantastic because a rule of life is that, using the Latin idea of it, it's a rule or rhythms or patterns in our life to help say, this is how I want to live. This is what I need to do. As we've said here, a rule of life guards our habits and guides our life.
We did write that.
Yes, we did write that part.
Anything with alliteration, it came right
It came from here, yes. So you're saying, what do you want? We want to abide in Jesus. Well, what do we need to do to get what we want? We need to create a rule of life to abide in Jesus.
And the rule of life is a means to an end.
Yeah.
So the end is to abide in Jesus, to grow like Jesus, to live on mission, to multiply like Jesus. And the rule of life is a tool to get there. There's some great quotes in the Abide Cohort Guide from John Mark Comer and Pete Scazzaro that really get into the essence of rule of life. And if you have looked at the guide or you're looking at it right now, you will see, and I'm gonna hold this up. If you're listening on the podcast, you don't see this.
No.
Because you're driving and you're listening.
Hopefully.
But if you're watching, you see that this page actually has an example of what a rule of life is, and it's set up in 4 different quadrants.
Yeah, the original rule of life, again, the ancient one that's a part of church tradition, it had 4 quadrants to it, and they were prayer, rest, relationships, and work. And those 4 quadrants are you thinking about is like 4 areas of your life. Prayer was about your relationship with God. Rest was about like your own personal, what we would say, obedience. Then you have relationships and work. And so as we looked at that, we're like, man, that's 4 quadrants. That sounds very similar to our 4 values of grow: gospel, relationships, obedience, works. And so we just took the ancient format and put our revolution spin on it to where we call it a revolution rule of life. And so you'll see here, as Pastor David mentioned, this revolution rule of life has 4 quadrants to it: gospel, relationships, obedience, works. All are the things we can do that help us to accomplish the one thing, which is to abide in Jesus. So it's looking at it from a perspective of saying we all have these 4 different areas in our life. And again, we're actually going to break down these 4. But the gospel is ultimately about your relationship with God, relationships about your relationships with other people. Obedience, again, operating in obedience, does include things like rest, taking a Sabbath, making sure you're healthy in every area of your life. And then works, living on mission, and then your actual job. And so we want to help you basically develop rhythms in all 4 of these areas of your life that are governing your life, that are guarding your life, saying, this is the goal. This is what I want to do.
Think about it as you're building a structure.
Yeah,
You're
building a structure.
A trellis.
A trellis.
If I go John 15 on you.
Yes, yes.
So as you're building this, it's important, and I think we can all fall into this. Okay, under each quadrant, I'm just going to have 15 different things.
Yeah,
I'm going to do all these things.
Yeah.
That would set me up for failure.
Totally.
And I'll just give you an example. When I was filling out my rule of life based on my formation evaluation, under gospel, I had 2 things.
Yeah.
Under relationship, I had 2 things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I can handle that.
Yes.
And so the ultimate goal of this is to create a rule of life, to create some structures in your life that allows you to follow Jesus in a way that he said to follow him.
Yeah, we're actually going to give you an overview in this session of these 4 quadrants. And as Pastor David said, under each one of these, we're going to give you examples. But that doesn't mean that you have to include all these in your own rule of life. We just want to give you examples for you to see like, okay, I can do that, I can do that. And then in sessions 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, we'll actually take one session per quadrant and actually drill down into them even more to, again, try to help you learn how to develop those rhythms in your life. Because again, the goal is after this is done is to have a rule of life based upon these 4 quadrants that are actually helping you to be a disciple. Actually help you be grounded in the gospel, rooted in relationships, all that stuff.
This is not another to-do list.
No.
As a matter of fact, it's really important, especially during a season of Abide or as you're creating this, to come up with a to-don't list.
Yes.
And probably the to-don't list is more important.
Totally.
What we say no to is more important than what we say yes to, because when we say yes to something, we're saying no to someone.
Yes.
So these things, did that make any sense? I think it did. In my mind, it did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the things that you might want to consider in the quadrant of the gospel for a rule of life.
Yeah, again, the gospel is about developing rhythms in your relationship with God. Again, as we said in session 1, we want you to be grounded in the gospel. We want you to not, we want you to be able to answer the question of like, are you a Christian? And not say, I'm trying to be, but say, yes, I am because of Jesus. The finished work of Jesus. I'm saved by grace through faith, right? Like you understand that. And so what we have here, again, just some spiritual disciplines to help you be grounded in the gospel. Things like Bible meditation, where we're actually meditating on the Bible. The very simple Bible study method we use here is REAP, R-E-A-P. Again, we'll talk more about that when we get to that session. Prayer, we want you to be a person who prays. Silence and solitude, another great practice. Journaling, that's one that I wrestle with. And then church gatherings and worship. And again, these are things that you can do in this area of the gospel that you can do. You can actually do these things that as we do those things, they enable us to do what we can't do, which is, again, being grounded in the gospel, helping us understand. And so in this area, this quadrant, our goal for you is to think about, spend time praying and saying, God, which one of these do I feel like realistically I can do? And then start doing those on a regular basis.
You may be listening to this or watching this in July or August, but we recorded this during our 21 days of prayer and fasting. And the practice of journaling, which I loved journaling when I first got saved. I still have all of my journals. Some of them are redacted. It kind of looks like a CIA dossier.
Yeah.
But I do go back to them, and I had gotten out of that practice, but during this particular season of Abide, each day that we're reading through the Gospel of John, I've been journaling, and I have found that spiritual practice of writing things down and remembering what God has done, because I want to go back at the end of Abide, hey, God, did you answer any of these prayers?
Did you do this? Yeah.
What is going on? I'm even writing down, okay, how do I want to grow in my relationships this year?
Yeah.
Because that's the second quadrant.
Yeah, and again, that's what's powerful about these spiritual disciplines. Whether it is journaling, praying, silence and solitude, it is you doing the things that you can do to enable what you can't do for God to actually grow you. And yeah, as you move into the next quadrant, relationships, it's like, as you become a person who reads the Bible, prays, journals, that actually helps you be rooted in relationships. And so this is about prioritizing relationships in your life. If you're married, if you have kids, depending upon your season of life, you're gonna prioritize these relationships in this part. And so when we say relationships, again, it's not just about having relationships with people here at church. We want that, and that's on here, like being on a serving team, being in a community group, being in a formation group. Those are good, but that's just one area. And I think that's where a lot of discipleship methods in churches can kind of falter, is we just think discipleship is doing things at church.
Right.
But our goal is not for you to have a laundry list of things to do to be here at church all the time.
Right.
But to give you some few basic things, some simple steps that you can do so that then in your marriage, in your relationship with kids, in your work, you're actually learning how to be a better relationship person. You're learning how to one another. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
You're learning how to love one another, forgive one another, bear with one another. And so in this area of the rule of life, it's just simply prioritizing some of those relationships.
And it's hard to be a good neighbor if you're not home.
Yes.
So that's the concept of not being here all the time.
Yeah.
Now, being here is important.
Yes.
So prioritizing the gathering of church, and that may be something that you wrote down in your gospel quadrant.
Yeah.
I am going to prioritize the gathering on Sundays or gathering on Thursday.
Yeah.
Or if you're a student, coming on Wednesday nights. Or if you're a young adult, coming on Sundays and on Tuesday
Yeah.
For young adults. Obedience is the next letter, the next quadrant. And I do want to take a little bit of time on this because sometimes obedience gets a bad rap in church.
Totally. Yeah, again, when we think of the word obey, a lot of people just think God is a God of rules, which interestingly enough, when God created the world, he only gave two rules. One was a prohibition, don't do this, but the other one was do this, which was in the context of marriage. And so rules, again, if you think about it from the perspective of a rule of life, it's not about something we have to do, but it's something that we are choosing to do, a rhythm that we're choosing to create to help hold up growth in our life. And this quadrant of obedience, again, we want you to learn how to operate in obedience. And what we want you to think about in this area is like, okay, these are the areas in my life that I need to highlight in this season to make sure I'm obeying. And that could be, things about your money, like financial health. That could be things about even relationships, your physical health.
Yep.
Again, I think a lot of times most discipleship programs don't include things like that. They don't include things like rest.
Yeah.
They don't include things like prioritizing a Sabbath. We put all of that underneath this area of obedience because, again, this is about, if you think about the G and the O, these are mostly about things that involve just you, and like the R and the W involve others. But the O is areas of your life where, you just haven't really been that good, that faithful. And again, that can be physical health.
Yeah.
That can be financial health. And you're saying, I want to put these practices in my life so that I can become the healthiest version of myself.
It's another Latin word. Obedience is another Latin word, obedire, which simply means to pay attention to listen to. So these are areas of your life to pay attention to. And that's what I like about how we've laid this out is, okay, this is an area of my life that I need to pay attention to.
Totally, yes.
And what does Jesus say about it?
Yes.
It goes back to the definition of disciple.
Which can include things and we put in here like recreation and hobbies.
Yeah.
Like it's important for us to be people that not only pray, but play, that have fun. And so again, what we're saying, and I didn't even mean for that to alliterate.
I saw what you did there.
It's important to prioritize that in your life because again, being a follower of Jesus, there were times where Jesus went to a wedding feast. He turned water into wine. He was feasting. He was hanging out with people. He was doing things that were enjoyable. And again, I think a lot of times as disciples, we just think, I got to read this and study this. And we do need to do those things. But it's also prioritizing, I love how you said it, just reminding me of there's going to be things that the Spirit is saying to us in a season. Like, hey, man, maybe these next 6 months, you've been working really hard. You just need to make sure you're prioritizing a Sabbath, a 24-hour day period. You need to make sure you're prioritizing working out. You need to make sure you're prioritizing doing something recreational that's fun for you and your spouse if you're married. So all of that falls underneath this quadrant of obedience.
Paying attention to your free time, paying attention to your health, paying attention to your finances.
Yes.
Walking in good works is the fourth quadrant in the rule of life. And the first four letters of the word works is work.
Yeah.
and quite often, especially in church, we don't think of actual work, what we do for a living, as part of walking in good works.
Yeah, before the curse entered the world in Genesis chapter 3, God gave Adam a job. Like he had work to do. So work itself is not a curse. It just became a curse after the fall. But now in Christ, as he's redeeming us and the world, we can now see work as a part of our worship. And so again, part of what we want you to think about in this quadrant, in this season of your life, is to say, maybe you have some specific projects at work that you have coming up. You're going to write that down. Say, I'm going to spend, when I get to work, I'm going to spend the first hour of every day working on this thing. It could also include, I want to be a better employee in this way, or if you own your own business, I want to do these certain things. I want to develop these kind of rhythms in my work life. So it's thinking about that area of your life, because the reality is we spend so much of our life at work,
Yep.
at a job. And that doesn't have to be arduous. That doesn't have to be like, oh, I can't wait to go to church to do the spiritual things. Well, you can do spiritual things at work
Yes.
too, which
Yes.
includes living life on mission,
Yes.
sharing your faith, blessing your coworkers. And that's another aspect that we want you to think about in this quadrant is how can you live your life on mission? How can you be the type of person that is blessing those around you?
Yeah, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's not being the creepy, weird Christian at work.
Yeah.
It's, hey, that guy or that girl's different. What is it about them? Why are they so kind? Why do they listen more than they speak?
Totally.
Why are they so generous?
Yeah.
So these are the things that we're going to break down in sessions 3, 4, 5, and 6 even further when you're creating your rule of life. But there is a worksheet
Yes.
in the Abide Cohort Guide, and it's called Revolution Rule of Life. And we've tried to make this part of your homework to be a little challenging.
Yeah.
Like, write down the things that maybe God is saying to stop doing.
Yeah.
Write down the things that maybe God is saying do
Yeah.
or pay attention to. So as you're creating this rule of life, think about it like if you're filling out a worksheet for the IRS.
I don't want to think about that.
You're not gonna put everything on the final form, but you will have some stuff on the worksheet that may not get there.
Yeah.
So what we're saying is examine your life.
Yeah.
Examine yourself. That's why there's a formation evaluation in session 1, and then creating the rule of life in session 2.
Yeah, the end of session 1 was about where you're at right now, like looking back at your life. And now at the end of session 2, now we're starting to think about, okay, that's where I'm at. Now, where could I be?
That's right.
Kind of starting to look forward. You can do a 6-month rule of life. You can do a year. I think it's good if you want to do a year and then just start to evaluate it. So again, what these questions are going to do is just start getting your ideas, like you said, kind of start working your way through. Then towards the end, you'll actually create, a final rule of life. But this is just you putting down some thoughts about, okay, where I'm at right now, where do I need to be? What are some things that I have coming up over the next 3 to 6 months? Where are some challenging things in my life? What are some areas in my life I know I need to take ground in, I need to grow in? And so that's, as you fill that out, it's kind of thinking more towards the future.
I'm really glad you said that, because when we were creating this, that was one of the things that was so helpful that you encouraged me with, was think about 3 to 6 months. What projects do you have coming up? What areas of your life that you can't work on right now, but you want to work on later in the year?
Yeah.
So finish your formation evaluation, begin to work on your rule of life, and in sessions 3, 4, 5, and 6, we'll break those down even further.
Yeah, well, actually, like we said, dig into each quadrant and help you better understand how to fill that out for that one.
Hope you're enjoying the Abide Cohort.
See you session 3.